because what India is doing in both this SDG 1 and SDG 2, both I want to highlight them. And another important thing, just remember your childhood dates, where exactly we used to see many used to bring, especially when I go to my native, I used to see many, my neighbors used to bring the water from more than 5 kilometers, 6 kilometers to their house. This, I was seeing it from my own eyes when I was a child. And even when we were in Kolar, we used to have a hand pump near the house where we used to go and bring the drinking water from the hand pump. So all these comes to my mind when we speak of this SDG goals, our standard of living, why this become very crucial to all of us. And, because all of you are a very well-learned and fellow colleagues of mine, I don't have to emphasize the importance of this, but the most important aspect of it is, as all of us know it was implemented in 2015 by 193 countries, including India. And they comprise around 17 goals and 169 targets, which has to be achieved by 2030. No, what makes them truly unique is their integration of economic, social, and environment dimensions. Because, all these years, whenever comes to the poverty, we used to see poverty and hunger as together. But here it is not the same. That is the difference when we see of the present SDGs and earlier Millennium Development Goals. Because it recognizes the poverty, inequality, climate change, health, education, peace as deeply interconnected. Probably earlier policies, we never saw all these factors together. They were looked as in isolated areas, but now, these are all interconnected. And progress in one area fuels the progress in the another. That is the advantage that which we find in the SDGs that which we are seeing today. And moreover, they are also, when we are saying they're interdependent, it also spillovers to the other borders also. Say, for example, poverty in neighboring countries of India, it spill over to us also. In case if it is there in India, again, vice versa. So the SDG matters because they offer a shared global vision and a collective responsibility. So we as a one, how will we face these major issues? That is the most important thing. And when it comes to the Millennium Development Goals to SDGs, as I just mentioned to all of you, this is much more comprehensive, more focused, and it is targeting the most important human needs, which are the essential for a simple standard of living. I cannot say a luxurious one. At least, all these years, many human beings suffered from even the basic amenities. So SDGs aimed at targeting the poverty, hunger, health, education, and the developing countries. So more when we speak of this, when we speak of the global pact that which the SDGs have made themselves. So this is basically to see that to make the place, the world much better. So when for the first time, I was hunger and poverty were the combined challenge in the MDGs. For the first time, they saw these are the two different, though they are connected, they are different issues because say in the case of India, say we have the food security, but when it comes to the hunger index, no, we are not faring that well. So these are the issues. Probably, this was across the world, and because of which the SDGs have identified all of them. So they play a very equal weight on sustainable economic growth, technology transfer, global partnership. So all this, so the total goal is to help the people to have a shared mission, right, everywhere. So shared mission for all the people everywhere. So in this first session, I'll be discussing on the eradicating poverty through economic policies, integrating SDG 1 into the India's development strategy. Now, all these years, right, I just want to raise few issues here. Say, assume tomorrow, just hypothetically imagine for a minute. Just imagine for a minute that tomorrow you will be having only $3 to meet all your needs. So then, how do you cope up with that particular situation? Because all these years you are having a standard of living which will not be there tomorrow because you are having only a $3 to meet all your needs. Then how would you feel? Then another important issue is, when you hear that 1 out of every 10 people worldwide are in that situation of that extreme poverty. So don't we think that it's a shared human responsibility to all of us? So that's another crucial thing that which I just want to bring to your notice. And another crucial thing is if social protection systems are guaranteed for everyone. Every country tries to do it, right? Every country tries to do it. They claim that, they give the social protection system. Then how do we bring, how do we just look at the poverty in those countries? How do you look at the hunger in those countries? So in case the social protection is guaranteed to everyone, then will it change the economy's a country's growth, stability, and will it affect the people's daily lives? Of course, I know what will be your answer. Because as a sensible human beings, if not even the economists, as sensible human beings, all of us do agree to those issues. And when we speak of eradicating the extreme poverty, which is goal number 1, introduction to SDG, that's a goal number 1, no poverty. Still remember when I read the characteristics of Indian economy, right? India is having more population. India is having more poor in the world. India lacks technology. India lacks capital formation. India lacks infrastructure. India lacks capital formation. So all these, that is how we began, started our studying the economics. So whether the same conditions prevail now also, that is another important issue that which I wish to raise now. And let us try to substantiate, how exactly the economic policies in India, whether they help to prevent poverty or not. First, let us try to look at the world perspective and then come to the India. So, right now, as all of you know it, right, extreme poverty is defined by the World Bank as, sir, 1 minute, kindly allow the screen sharing so that I can share the PPTs.
Sir, you can share, sir. I made you
No, yeah,
co-host, sir. You can share.
For one more ID of mine.
Is it, sir? Okay. Just
Yeah,
a minute.
this it has been done so that it will be easy for me. That's what I can. Yeah, sorry for that. And yeah, but
Okay, sir. Now you
when
can.
yeah, so fine. When we are speaking of eradicating the extreme poverty, right, which we are not, also talking about the distant dream. So all this is planned, right? At least, by 2030, no person anywhere in this planet lives in the extreme poverty. This is the plan right now. And all of you also know this World Bank definition of poverty. So when we speak of US dollar 3 per person at the 2021 prices at the PPP, even these PPP prices are also given on the World Bank website. Probably many of you may have also seen that. So if an individual in 2021 prices, if you don't, right, if you don't earn or consume $3 per day, then he is termed as poor. So over the last few decades, of course, yes, there is a sea amount of changes which we can see, of course, in India also and the world also. So, but still, when you speak of the world perspective, when you see in the overall world, because poverty in Pakistan or poverty in other Asian countries also affect us too. So here by 2025, almost 808 million people That is one in every 10 human beings on earth are still in the extreme poverty. Once upon a time, if at all, if somebody say 1 in 10 in the world is poor, then probably the immediate next statement would be, yes, fine, out of them, 50% would be Indians. No, this time it is not the case. So when we speak of the 1 in 10 in the world are poor or in the extreme poverty, and the plan is already it is 2025 now, another 5 years, right? There should be no extreme poverty. So this is the situation right now we are standing. And if we continue at our present pace, so then there will be 8.9% of the world's population will still be trapped in the extreme poverty. That we have to admit, going by the projections. But at least, can we halve it? Can we just cut it down by 50%? So that should be the agenda right now in front of all of us, because even as an academicians, we have the role to play. The challenge is not just about the poverty, it's also about the hunger. Probably I will be speaking on it in the next session. Because the measure of the human deprivation is also very crucial when we speak of the global hunger levels. So that which we can discuss elaborately in the next session. So together, in case if the poverty and food insecurity form a double burden that weighs heavily on the communities, economies, and hopes for a better future. They are crying, all these are crying their attention towards them. Even the economies where the poor are more, the communities which are poor. So they are crying for a better future. So it is all of a shared responsibility to give it to all of them. So all of us know why poverty persists. I'll not be going in depth with all that things. Poverty, when we speak earlier, we were speaking only the economic dimension, that is the income dimension. So now we are taking it in terms of whether one is socially excluded, whether he is vulnerable, he or she is vulnerable, whether employed or unemployed. All these issues are also taken into consideration. And that is what is making the poverty definition today much more intact. That's the reason that why when we speak of extreme poverty, these issues becomes very crucial to all of us. And, all of us should care for this because our well-beings are interconnected. If the growing inequality is very unfair, and if it leads to more poverty, then yes, all of us have to look into that. So the economic growth weakens the social cohesion in case if we do it. Then there is no point in economic growth. So if your economic growth is inclusive, then it weakens the social cohesions, feel political and social tensions. And the most important thing is, when it is very inclusive, it weakens it weakens poverty, it raises the employment in the economy. And the more powerful tool to fight the poverty, which I've been always seeing, is the social protection. Once we provide it, yes, eradication becomes much easier. But again, an integrated approach, which we will be discussing it in the later stage. Strong universal system can shield the people from falling into the poverty and recover from the shocks. Whenever listen to the word shock, then the immediate thing that probably which comes to all of your mind as well as mine is the COVID-19 pandemic, which unleashed both having the short-term as well as the long-term hardships across the worldwide. Short-term effects we have seen. And now, even now, whenever in the economic theory, whenever in the speak of the Indian economics also, We speak of pre-COVID and post-COVID. So because the poverty during the COVID increased across the world, of course in India too. Even the middle class population in India shrinked at that point of time, but of course we recovered very fastly. So 47.6% of the global population, about 3.8 billion people, including 1.4 billion children, don't have the social protection in this world. So these are the issues that which are of the great concern for the humanity. And governments have recognized it, this gap, that they're not providing the social protection, and almost half of the world population is not having this social protection. So the governments are also trying their best, across the world. I'm speaking across the world. I will speak of the India in few more minutes. And 105 countries and territories announced nearly 350 social protection measures after COVID-19. So when they realized that, almost half of the world population is unprotected. So then they started the protection measures. So 80% of these measures, unfortunately, are temporary. But anyhow, once is a beginning, right? These are the beginning. And though we don't need the short-term reliefs at this point of time, but still a good beginning is half done. And I also now remind you before going to the India, when we speak of target SDG 1, then we are speaking of no poverty. So when we are speaking of no poverty, we have the sub targets also laid down, right? Say target number 1 is no poverty. SDG 1 is no poverty. So there again, we have the sub targets clearly mention what it should be. So by 2030, the first 1.1 is to eradicate the extreme poverty for all people everywhere. So measured at $1.25 a day, now at $3 a day. So reduce poverty at least by 50%. That is the another important goal that which the SDG have put it to all the countries, right? Target 1.2 is to reduce poverty by at least 50%. It's good that we have a vision, to what extent we can go, right? The economics, we always have the full employment as one of our goal for the economic fiscal policy goal, as well as the monetary policy goal. Why full employment? Knowing that it is very difficult, we will be having it. At least, we can reduce the unemployment when we aim at the top. So reduce the poverty by at least 50%. So by 2030, so to reduce the poverty, at least half the proportion of men, women, and children of all the ages living in the poverty. So then implement the social protection systems that which we were speaking of just now. So that data that which I was mentioning of 2023, wherein even 47.6% of the people of the global population is still unprotected, then this becomes target 1.3 becomes much more focused now. And social protection system should be strengthened. First, it should be implemented and then strengthened. And when we speak of the short run, yeah, good, because the resources all of a sudden in any economy for that matter may not be having, but it should be sustained. That should be converted to the long run. Then the equal rights to ownership, basic services, technology, economic resources. This is target 1.4. This is also very crucial, especially for all the men and women, especially the poor men and women, which we are speaking of. Their rights, especially to have an equal rights to the economic resources, are very vulnerable. If the rich comes at that point of time, even forget rich, even the middle class comes and stands with the poor, then probably he will grab that. So the access to the basic services, ownership and control over land and other forms of property. Say if it is inheritance or the natural resources or any new technology which it comes. Right nowadays, we are seeing the digital divide, which should not also happen. Now, probably the coming divide will be this AI divide, those who can have it and those who cannot have it, or those who know how to use it or those who doesn't know how to use it, or the financial services, so including the microfinance. So all these are the issues. Then the another important target that which the UN has given is build resilience to environmental, economic, and social disasters. Now, all these issues we are speaking in no poverty. That don't forget that. So resilience of the poor in those vulnerable situations and reduce their exposure and vulnerability to climate-related events. Even in Bangalore, we are witnessing that. Probably in your places, if you're also you may be witnessing that. In the summer you will be having a very scorching sun, and even you may get the rains in the summer also, and vice versa. So all these things we are witnessing, either the preponement of the monsoons or the postponement of the monsoons in the past 3 4 years. We have seen that. And so now, again, who is vulnerable to the climate change impact? So again, the poor, the vulnerable. So these sections, right? So to build the resilience to these kinds of social disasters, right? Environmental disasters, economic disasters. So these are the things. And again, if it impacts climately also, again, it have its impact on the economic aspects. So all these are the interconnected, right? We cannot see the economics as a different island or society as a different or environment as a different arena, because all these are interconnected. Because we live in society wherein environment as well as economy matters. EE matters in yes. So say yes because we have to have both environmental as well as economic resilience. And another important target, or target 1.6, is to mobilize the resources to implement the policies to end poverty. Because many developing countries lack the resources. So how to mobilize the resources for the variety of the programs, for this poverty eradication programs, for the climate, to negate the impact of the climate change. So all these issues, right? So who will fund them? How to mobilize the resources for it? So for government also it becomes difficult. So how exactly even UN can help? How exactly other countries can help? So how exactly it can help itself? So all these issues are also crucial. So another important thing is to create pro-poor and gender-sensitive policy frameworks. This is also very crucial when we speak of the poor. So the narratives are definitely should be to pro-poor, right? So when we are saying about the people-centric, what it should be for those individuals who are vulnerable, right? Speak on those who are not having it. Then we can speak of the others. So the first is to create a pro-poor and a gender-sensitive framework. At least now we are little gender-sensitive, till a long way to go, that I also agree. Because all these years, all these years, we were seeing the narration that where only he was there, right? Even forget more being more sensitive, giving more respect. Even our narrations in the textbook or our discussion in the classroom, we used to speak of he or him. Now at least, she or her is coming in front of he and his. So all this are crucial. And these simple things changes us to a greater extent. And when we start respecting women, the things will change. And who will be affected more? It is the woman who will be affected more. Even if the poor, who will be affected more? It is the woman. It is the children who will be more affected. So this gender sensitive development strategies. So in the we speak of the gender budgeting, all these are very crucial actions that which has to be done. So you just try to disseminate this poverty data also and try to see where the poor are more, right, in the world. Urban area, rural area. Then immediate answer will be rural area. So among the rural area, who are more poor? Men, women? Women will be more poor. So within women, who are more poor? Again, the vulnerable sections are more poor. Either they may be or marginalized sections. So all these things, when we sensitize the things and when our policy have all these issues, then yes, the things are here for the change. So the current, I did mention one thing before moving on to the India. So if this current trend continues, right, 2023 data I'm just speaking of, so 8.9% of the world population will be still living in the extreme poverty by 2030. And only 1 in 5 countries will have halved their national poverty levels. So this, let us keep it in mind. So probably we should also sensitize, right, wherever possible, so that these issues will be taken more seriously. And the most important thing, we also spoke about the social security measures that which even by 2023, 1 in 2 did not have, roughly around 1 in 2 did not have the social security. Of course, programs have started again short term. How it can be converted into the long term across the world, that also has to be thought of. So with these issues, right, so what should be done? An economic student need not have to be given a solution for this, right? Invest to enhance the economic opportunities, improve the education, extend social protection to all, right? See to the more excluded. I I know that all of you, and of course, even if you ask me, I will also be saying the same thing. And of course, even the Sustainable Development Goals report of 2025 also says the same thing. Okay, with all this in the background, friends, let us try to understand what is about India when we speak of no poverty. And with this background, when we are entering, of course, I have some good news to share when we speak of the Indias. And of course, few of you may be knowing it also. So let me first draw your attention to the few facts with numbers. Then probably, let us disseminate it, how we were able to do and still what are the challenges. So by 2022, all this data are provided by the United Nations. And so we should be proud of these achievements too. And of course, that we should not forget, nor we should sleep on this, because still we have a long way to go before we sleep. I remind of that poem lines again and again. So in 2022, the proportion of poor population receiving the social assistance through the direct cash benefit was 100%. Because that was the aftermath of COVID, right? 2020, we suffered. And after that, by the 2022, how could we recover? India was one of the economies which recovered very fast. It was affected also very severely, and we recovered also very fast. And probably one was this social assistance, which reached their accounts 100%. So proportion of poor population receiving the benefits to their own accounts, right, need not have to go to any offices without paying any commissions was 100%. So then proportion of population with severe disabilities in receiving disability cash benefit also increased. It was just 5.4% in 2015. It increased to 18.3%. Still, we have a long way to go. But yes, there is an important from 2015 to 2022. There is a C amount of change. Then the proportion of population which is having access to basic drinking water services. Now, all these years, you have been listening to these narratives, right? Drinking water, then potable drinking water, then mineral water, then RO water. All these narratives you have been listening because when we keep on stressing all this, then we mean to say that this drinking water and needs more purification. But good drinking water now, basic drinking water services now is with 93.3% of population by 2022. It must have increased a little more. So Jal Jeevan Mission did a wonderful job in this. And it was just 79.9% in 2000, right? Almost nearing to 80% in 2000. Now, right? So 93.3%. So that's what, when I go to the villages now, I'll be reminded of what I said in the beginning, right? I reminded of, I've seen my relatives, where one of my relative used to be associated only with bringing the drinking water to the home. Almost entire half day of her used to go for that only. And preferably again, male population never did this job also in the villages. So these kinds of issues comes to my mind when I read these statistics, when I utter these statistics. So hence, I said there is some good news to cheer about also. And the basic sanitation facilities, right? The basic sanitation facilities. In 2000, only 14.1% of them had the access to the basic sanitation facilities, charge, basic sanitation services. So it increased from 14.1% in 2000 to 78.4% in 2022. We have to reach 100% because these are the basic things, right, that which we have to provide to all the population. Only then, we can speak of dignified living, right? Dignified living, ease of living, standard of living, dignified standard of living. We live, but how we live matters. How our neighbors live also matters. It's not just about us, it's about we. It's not about me, it's about us, it's about we. So, friends, when we speak of eradicating poverty in the Indian context, we did listen to some wonderful statistics which really bring some cheers to us. So, most ambitious human development missions of our nation, when I definitely want to reiterate that. So it is not just, we have to meet the target. It is about the promise of dignity, opportunity, and security for every citizen of India. So when every individual, comes out of the poverty line, then he will be living, right, the life of dignity. He will have the opportunities, the life of security. So here, it has been not a single dimensional challenge. Of course, all of us know, we have taught it also in the classrooms. How vicious cycle of poverty, right? All this we have taught. So hence we know this is not a single dimension challenge, and it has meant hunger, it has meant lack of shelter, absence of healthcare, exclusion, don't having the opportunities. So this, when we don't have the house, when we don't have the health facilities, when I'm excluded, when I don't have the opportunities, I cannot also improve my life. So these are the issues. Say, I was just mentioning to you, right, when I used to see my relative girl who used to drop out to the school to fetch the water. Almost every day, some half a day used to go. Either she used to skip the school either in the morning or in the afternoon. So look at how the things would be for them. And even I remember, right, when I used to go to my native when I was a kid, I used to see, even nobody used to cook the rice in their house, right? Only when the relatives come, somehow they used to manage it. Otherwise, it was the millets, which now has become a luxury. Of course, then, it was a poor man's food. And of course, hardly I saw the sugar in any of the houses then. They were using jaggery. Today, again, this has the reverse. Things have reversed. That's a different issue. So all these are the crucial issues when we have something to cheer about. Yes, these are the things. Yes, we have come out of it. And when we look back at the independent India, right, after 47, remember, after 47, we were almost, right, India was facing a very severe crisis, food crisis at that point of time. Majority of Indians were poor. So very tough situation, and Government of India also issued an order not to invite more than 30 people for any of their private programs. Look at the severity of the food security at that point of time. So wherever you see, only poor were visible at that point of time in the country. So in the decades after the independence, now at least, when you see around, you find a different picture. But the foundation was laid once when we got the independence. Yes, let me not forget that. So they built the industries, they invested in the infrastructure, the green revolution happened, food security happened, poverty elevation scheme came in n number. Huge, good number of things did happen after independence. But the major problem, right, before the economic reforms of 1991, Indian economy didn't grow at the rate at which it was expected. And that became a crucial thing. Indian economy did not grow at the rate at which it should have grown. All of us know, right, the popularly dubbed Hindu growth rate at that point of time, which was 3 to 4%. So that made it very difficult to create jobs in pace with the population growth. I still remember, we were taught and we were speaking of the trickle down effect. This is how it will happen. But there was no trickle down because the growth was not sufficient. You should have a sufficient amount of growth to trickle down, right? When I myself don't have the sufficient knowledge, then forget how will I just pass it on to my students? How will I disseminate the knowledge if I don't have the enough amount of knowledge? Similar was with the growth rates. It was with the 3 to 4% and it never trickled down. When it then trickled down, then yes, India did not grow. India did not become developed. So, but the programs like public distribution system at that point of time, the land reforms, the rural employment schemes such as integrated rural development programs, national rural employment guarantee programs, all this came at that point of time. So, but their impact was not that strong. Maybe because of the weak targeting, intention was good, but the problem in this country is intentions will be always good. But the implementation, there is a problem. There is an inadequate institutional capacity also to absorb, to see its proper monitoring. So probably all of us know, till 1980s, there was many explicit poverty-oriented schemes, almost more public-oriented, more publicly explored or publicly announced poverty-oriented schemes at that point of time. But they also struggled with leakages, poor delivery system also. But anyway, that was the beginning of the poverty alleviation programs, and we also learned the lessons, right? India also learned her lessons. So this, in case if we introduce it like this will be the end result. So all of us know, right, whether we liked it or not in 1991, economic reforms in the form of liberalization, privatization, and globalization came and tried to free the markets. So the approach to the poverty reduction also changed. Because, we were all speaking at that time, planning during globalization, right? Planning it during globalization. Whether the rationale of planning when the NEP or new economic policy is implemented. So all this, I hope you remember, at least some of you remember, all these issues were discussed at that point of time. So the way they approached the poverty reduction also changed because of that, because individuals or Indians needed safety nets because the risk was higher. From the protectionist regime, we were moving to the open regime. So initially it was little tough, but the Indians' adaptability is also great. So, because of all this and the government's targeted welfare schemes, poverty, when you go with the Tendulkar methodology, right, fell from 45% in 93, 94 to 22% by 11, 12. So this was also no less an achievement. But this again was not but the product of growth. Let us not forget it. Yes, growth rates improved during the post-economic reform period, and hence India could reduce the people below poverty line. No, I don't agree with that type of connotations. So it was a consciously integrating the welfare into the growth strategy. It was consciously integrating the welfare into the growth strategy that clicked for India. So they did it. And of course, there was a sea amount of change that happened thereafter. So from 11, 12 to present, if you see the data, again, you'll be jumping with joy. Of course, without forgetting, we have a lot of things to do. Let us not sleep on those achievements. So the government clearly began to view this poverty as multidimensional, addressing not only the income deprivation, but also the food security, education, health, housing, financial inclusion. So all these were the issues that which were discussed. So let us not forget all this. So let us now try to understand, how this had its impact, right? How this had its impact on the reducing the poverty. When we speak of the poverty alleviation programs especially after the economic reforms. So how exactly they helped us? So the first crucial thing, right, these initiatives, especially I told you, right, after 1991, there was a multi-dimensional angle was given, right? Poverty was looked into from the multi-dimensional angle. So they consciously integrated the welfare into the growth strategy and tried to look at it in a different perspective. And the targeted welfare and development programs were initiated to address the multidimensional nature of the poverty. So they aim to give the food security to the poor. Yes, India had food security, but was food security there for the poor? So if you want to empower the poor, or if you want to bring out the poor from the below poverty line, then yes, first thing is ensure the food security. Then create the employment opportunities. Then promote the financial inclusion. When I used to read this, as a student, India severely lacks financial inclusion. I used to wonder, why people are not getting the bank accounts. It used to become a lengthy process. I still remember when I opened my first account when I was doing, probably I had cleared my 10th or so. And to open an account, it was so tough. You need a surety, a reference person. He has to come to the bank and sign on the form. Otherwise, they never used to allow us to open the account. And, when at least by that time I had already studied 10th standard, what happens to the one who doesn't know about the financial inclusion or who doesn't know how to open the account? Of course, my parents were there to assist me. That's it. For the others, who doesn't have that knowledge. So that becomes very difficult at that point of time also. So what were the crucial programs that which changed the entire perspective, entire gambit of this? So where the poverty declined, of course, now the inequality figures are also slightly, but still a long way. especially among the rural and the vulnerable population. So rural, almost it was a stagnant growth for many years, for many decades. So that also changed. So now things are changing, but of course now the trumpet has become much more this one. But of course, India will come out of that too. So post 1991 economic reforms, when we speak of that, I, immediately jumped to the employment and livelihood generation programs, especially this Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act or program, right? Because of Act, the program came, which was enacted in 2005, and from 2006, it was implemented across the country. So where the jobs were demanded, right? For the first time, there was a change in the thinking process. So you will get the job if the job is there. No, you demand the job and you get the job. Demand-driven job. You register for it. If you don't get the job, then you will be paid the compensation within 15 days. If you're not given the job, you will be given the compensation. If you have a very young kids, you cannot work, you need somebody to take care. Yes, that was also there in that program. Creche facilities was provided, for the first time, probably for the unskilled workers, some program thought of even having a creche facilities for the kids. A senior woman, whoever has come, right, the aged woman, among those who had come to work, was appointed to take care of the kids, and the same amount of wages was paid to her also under the shade of the tree. If there no shade was there, then the tents were put. So all these changed the rural gambit. And when we speak of this, right, which provides not just the legal assurance for the 100 days of wage employment for the unskilled manual work. So and for the first time, men and women were given the equal wages in the rural areas. That brought the same amount of changes. Till then, if there was some programs in the field, then all of us generally used to ask for the men how much, for the women how much, for the kids how much. Of course, employing kids is not legal. But this is how even the rural India spoke at that point of time. But this program changed that gambit. It said, no, the same wages will be paid for the rural women, for the urban women, same wages were paid. Men and women, right? Rural men and rural women, both the wages were same. So it brought a sea amount of changes. It significantly improved the rural purchasing power. It helped to reduce the migration. It contributed to the development of rural infrastructure. So all these things happened. And before that, there was this Swarna Jayanti, Swarojgar Yojana was there. But, when this comes, I just cannot speak on those programs and only on this program. And of course, the self-help groups. So that was another model, right? Because this Swarna Jayanti Gram Swarojgar Yojana was also introduced to support the self-employment through the formation of self-help groups. So that was later institutionalized in the form of Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana. So now, things are giving the fruits. And of course, yes, look at the program which has come, right? National Urban Livelihood Mission, which was launched in 2013, right? Popularly, that buses and all which came, which were moving in Bangalore at that point of time. You remember that JNAM? So all those buses were from these schemes. And when we speak of the similar support, it extended to the urban part, because many programs before 91 concentrated more on the rural areas. So now both the programs, right, simultaneously were there in the rural areas as well as urban areas. And that was another change in the gambit. And through urban poor, basically, they concentrated on the skill development, giving credit facilities, employment generation. So all these programs. Let me not forget here the Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program launched in 2008. And this offered the credit-linked subsidies for micro enterprises, promoting self-employment, entrepreneurship among artisans, youth. And then this solar Charaka mission in 2018 also decentralized the employment opportunities in rural areas through solar-powered Khadi clusters. So there was a huge change in the way they looked at it and the way the poverty reduced also. And when it referred to the food and nutrition, we spoke of employment till now. When we speak of the food and nutritional security, food security, again, very crucial domain for the poverty reduction strategy. So earlier they had the targeted public distribution system in 1997. So directing the subsidized food grains to below poverty line households. Again, this was strengthened in 2000 with Antyodaya Anna Yojana and subsequently with National Food Security Act in 2013. So in Antyodaya Anna Yojana, they offered the food grains at the highly subsidized prices to the poorest of poor. The National Food Security Act in 13 institutionalized the food entitlements for almost two-thirds of the population. So it ensured the protection against the hunger and the price shocks. But this was implemented after 2014 in a much, much effective way. The Annapurna Yojana, which came in 2000, right? So that provided around 10 kgs of free food grains monthly. So the midday meals program, let us not forget that midday meals program. And a few of you, in case if you remember that, right, the upma which was given as a midday meals program in the beginning when it was initiated. So the midday meal schemes, which expanded significantly after 2001, especially after following the Supreme Court directive. So in 2018, look at the Postan Abhiyan, which was launched Postan Abhiyan 1, Postan Abhiyan 2. So this was National Nutrition Mission, which was launched to address malnutrition among children, adolescents, women, through a multi-sectoral approach, reinforcing the cycle of health, productivity, essential for poverty eradication. And when it come to the housing and basic services, they also provided the improved living conditions through better housing infrastructure, right? So one need a basic amenity like house to live in. So imagine, the earlier classification of the housing and the roads, Kacha road and Pakka road. Pakka road and Kacha house and Pakka house. So all these things have changed right now. Thatched house, bamboo thatched house. So many classifications were there now, but all these classifications are narrowing down now. Then RCC house was very rarely found, but now they are in a number. So the number is gradually increasing. People are coming out and having a better standard of living. So that is the underlying. It doesn't mean that, okay, all of them are living in the better houses now. No. Much it has improved when you compare it to the past. So then, when in case of the housing and basic amenities, in 2015, Pradhana Mantri Awas Yojana, when for the Grameen, it was called as PMAY-G. So it actually promised that it will provide a rural household, every rural household with a permanent house and basic amenities, with a vision of housing for all. So now, so far, around 4.12 crore houses has been built under this. So now an additional, so 2.81 crores uh, have been now planned again. So one thing is, when they planned it, right? So the allocation was 4.12 crore house. Then it was 4.12 crores was the allocation. So the target was 3.84. So they reached almost 80%, 85% of it. So then the Pradhana Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, this was initiated in 2000. So then the rural mobility also increased. So, but even now, I'm not happy with the kinds of roads that which we have in the cities also. That is another issue. Except main highways, look at the roads that which we're having. These are also very important to reduce the poverty because it improves the mobility. Because you cannot be stuck in the traffic for quite a long time. Poor travel in public transport, and when you have the good roads there, they can easily move. So these are all the things, right? So there should be good roads in the rural area. There should be good roads in the urban areas. So, and another important thing is the essential services like healthcare, education, local market. So this also improves the everyday life and economic prospects in the rural areas. Then Pradhan Mantri Gramodaya Yojana was introduced. It has taken a broader approach of strengthening the rural infrastructure across the multiple sectors. So either in the health sector, housing, water, or roads, to have a meaningful impact on the quality of life in the rural India. Then, I should not forget to mention the Jal Jeevan Mission, which was launched in August 2019, which continues to change the lives by ensuring the access to safe drinking water through tap connections. Almost now whenever I go to the villages, I see, almost every household have this tap connection in front of their house. And Karnataka has done, better performed, but still, All India average, I did mention that. So almost more 80% of the rural households are now covered. So another 20%, they are planning it in this union budget 25-26. So they said within 28, it will be 100%. So we are moving closer to the goal of assured water for every home. And when we speak of the health and social protection, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, I cannot forget that because it gave the Ayushman Bharat, it brought in under the Ayushman Bharat umbrella, the world largest health assurance scheme, providing almost 5 lakh per family per year for the secondary and tertiary care hospitalization, which almost benefited over 10 crore vulnerable families. Many surveys did mention this, why they couldn't come out of the poverty before 91. Many of them mentioned, one of their family members were ill and they couldn't cater to the expenses of that particularly ill person, ill relative of them. So all the money that whatever they earn used to spend, and even they are in debt. So these kinds of instances are quite common in many of the research, in case if you read it, which came before 91. So here, so that is the reason that why in the Ayushman Bharat umbrella, when they started the health assurance scheme of Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, so up to 5 lakh rupees per family was given for that. And the scheme also helped to mitigate the health expenditure, as I was telling you. And the National Maternity Benefit Scheme, which was revised in 2016, with the support of a pregnant cash transfer of 6,000 rupees for a pregnant woman, which also did a good job, especially in the remote and un, underserved regions. So all these are the issues, right, which contributed for the reduction of poverty in this country. And of course, the low-cost insurance schemes such as Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana, and all these offers life and accident insurance to economically vulnerable section. That is most crucial, improving the household financial resilience. So when it comes to the financial inclusion and empowerment, so the government also pushed to include the financially excluded in the form of the banking, in the formal banking system. So started in 2014. So as on 7th March 2025, over 55.2 crore zero balance accounts have been opened under this scheme. So out of them, 36.63 crore accounts were in the rural areas. So that's another important milestone. So this actually had laid a very robust foundation for DBT, that's direct benefit transfers, enabling the pensions, scholarships, subsidies to be credited directly into the beneficiary's account. It also minimized the leakages. One study by Bluecroft Digital Foundation, it clearly mentions that the DBT system saved the government over 3.48 lakh crores between 2015 and March 2023 by plugging the leakages. So probably this 3.48 trillion rupees would have become a black money, or at least 10% of it, or 15% of 3.48 lakh crores, or the entire one. Because the huge money was saved to the exchequer. 3.48 lakh crores, 3.48 trillion was saved. So the share of subsidy expenditure also come down. When you save, when you directly it reaches, then much of the things start happening, and subsidy bill also can be reduced. Subsidy expenditure also came down from 16% to 9% because it reached the beneficiary and there was no issue whatsoever. So reflecting a better targeting and efficiency. So the total transfer through the DBT estimated by May 2025 was 44 lakh crores. 44 lakh crores. That's again another very important milestone. So all this helped to minimize the poor under the poverty line. Then we have another 2 or 3 more schemes, and then I will try to bring out the reasons for this, why the poverty reduced in India and how much it reduced. That's also very important. So financial inclusion, as I mentioned, was another major crucial one. Then the targeted support for the poor and the informal workers. So then they started off the targeted scheme for the informal workers and the deprived groups. So informal workers also needed it, deprived groups also needed these programs. So because the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwal Yojana that was launched in 2016, which provided 9 crore LPG connections from 9 crore LPG connections to women from the BPL households. So it reduced indoor air pollution and improving the women's health and dignity. Then the Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Man Dhan. So that also was introduced in 2019. It was a contributory pension scheme for an organized sector. So it ensured at least a monthly pension of 3,000 rupees after the age of 60. Then Prime Minister Swanidhi scheme launched in 2020 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, extended microcredit to the urban street vendors, enabling them to restart their business and sustain their livelihoods. So every sector, every segment was targeted, right? Wherever informal sector poverty was high, so target them. So see that, how they can come out of it. Then integrated rural development and model village promotion also was done. So many programs were integrated, right? MG Narega came, then the earlier schemes such as rural development programs, Swarna Jayanti, Gram Swaraj Ghar Yojana, all this were merged into it. And This helped the rural households to undertake income generating activities. So then there was, let me not forget, the National Food for Work program in 2004 and Sampurna Gramin Rojgar Yojana, which also aimed to provide the supplementary wage employment. In 2014, the Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana also was brought in. So it encouraged the members of parliament to adopt the villages and holistically develop those villages. So this program actually should be again reinitiated and see that almost all the villages should be developed. So here there was a more focus on physical infrastructure, social development outcomes such as education, sanitation, and social harmony. So these were the major programs which were implemented, and because of which, right, because of which there was this good amount of decrease in the poverty. So probably you must be seeing the table that which is there on the screen right now, where this data is compiled from the World Bank database and not from any of the other sources. It's from the World Bank data source, wherein you can find the population living in poverty in $3 as per 2021 prices, and also population living in poverty in 2017 prices at $2.15. So this $2.15 was revised from 2021 base year. So using made it $3. So see in 1977, right, 387 million people, right, 387 million people, close to 60% of the population were living on less than $3 a day at 2021 prices. So 60% of the population were living on less than $3 a day at 2021 prices. If you use the more extreme poverty line of $2.15 a day, then around 304 billion people were living under the extreme poverty. So needless to say that almost 1 in every 2 Indians faced severe deprivation. And at that point of time, right, the poor in India was that of the size of either an United States population, or Indonesia and Brazil's population. So this was how, or even you can club these countries and see the poor at that point of time in India were as much higher than this US, Indonesia, and Brazil population combined at that point of time. In 1983, there was some progress. The percentage living below $3 a day dropped to about 51%, and extreme poverty declined to 38%. Yet the absolute numbers remained staggering because the population was growing, but gains was slow. In the mid 1980s, there was some amount of change. After that, there was 1987 onwards. The poverty in percentage terms was almost unchanged compared to the earlier years, because it was very tough to break this vicious cycle of poverty. And the economy also, all of you know the 1990 crisis, which loomed large, and one of the factors, of course, external factors were more contributing, and of course, this cannot be forgotten. And after the economic reforms, right, in 1993, $3 per day poverty fell to 47%, and extreme poverty fell to 33.6%. So then started this, I did mention the programs, right, where the higher growth also was aimed at, and of course the targeted programs were the beginning to take hold through challenges. Of course, the challenges also remained. We cannot say that the challenges are not, even now it is there. So 2004, the decline was still gradual. But in 2009, look at this 2009, poverty dropped very sharply to 34.6%. $3 per day and $22.5 in extreme poverty. So after 2 years, right, that's in 2011, the numbers you can clearly see it fell down to 27.1% and 16.2% from earlier 27.1% in $3 per day and 16.2 in $2.15 per day. So the most dramatic change is visible in this data, right? So look what is happening from 1991 onwards, the more targeting of the programs. So that is where it has yielded us the results. So by 2022, only 5.25% of the Indians, about 75 million people lived below $3 a day. Even 75 million people is a big number. But the positive thing, look at from where we have come now. And you cannot now just say, right, India is the capital of the world's poorest people. No. And $2.35 a day in 2017 prices. So it has come down much drastically there also, right? The numbers are very clear. So 2.35%, right? 2.35%, wherein 33.66 million are leaving in 2022. 33.66% are leaving in 2022. Remarkable in that context. And when we